Selection show was as eventful as always. They put it at 11 o'clock and did it when all the kids were in school, and I guess the West Coast kids were just rolling out of bed when it came on. But NCAA puts a lot of effort into that. It's awesome. But no, we're going to Denver. We kind of knew that coming out of the weekend at SEC's. Kind of knew that that's kind of where it locked us in. When Florida jumped Michigan, it kind of took us off of their coattails that would have sent us potentially to Pitt and sent us to Denver with Michigan. So it's fine. It's a good draw. I mean, there's really not any. I mean, there's some places maybe that you could say are significantly more advantageous, but it's not. These days, when you get to this stage of the game, everybody's pretty good, and everybody's got to do a good job if they want to advance. Possibly with the exception of Oklahoma and Florida, nobody really can afford to have an off day.
At SEC, I mean, I know it wasn't the obvious outcome, but when you look at everything, is it just another one of these? Hey, all things considered, I think we did as well as we could.
It's one of those things where it's hard to get like overjoyed, but it's also there's no disappointment in it because they competed hard. It was a relatively complete meet. We didn't have any egregious major mistakes. We walked around a little bit on the first two events and then settled in on the final two, and we scored right at our NQS 197.8. I mean, that's kind of where we've been over the last month and a half or 2 months of the season, and whether it's been on the road or at home, that's kind of where we've been. So I think it's that high 197 pushing the 198 mark. I think we could have gone 198 in there, but nobody was going to beat Florida Saturday night. They were dialed in, and that roster, as I've said before, is likely the most credentialed and accomplished roster ever assembled in collegiate gymnastics. I mean, it's ridiculous. Every 1 through 6, every kid on that team could be an anchor somewhere else, on another team. So you kind of knew that if they put one together, it's hard to beat them. And the way they performed, nobody was going to beat them. I thought we could have done a little better on the first two events, which might have put us in second. But overall, I felt really good about the fight that they continued to show. This team has been their identity has been that they're fighters and they're gritty and they don't give a lot away. We gave a little bit away, but we never let it snowball. And so I told the team, there's no failure in this scenario whatsoever. You score 197.8 in this conference, and you're third. That's kind of an indicator of how strong the conference is more than it is an indicator of a meet that we had that would be a disappointment. So, look, it's a vast improvement over what we did last year at the SEC championships, and isn't that whether I don't care whether you're in business or whatever, you look at year over year improvement, and that's what we're continuing to see as we continue to measure ourselves against ourselves.
With the gap from this past weekend to regionals, do you think that the time off, health as well type deal will kind of change some circumstances for now?
No, we're not going to get anybody. I don't think we're going to get anybody back for regionals. I had hoped we might get KJ on an event, like primarily vault. She would have to have time to get ready on floor because that endurance is a different animal. But no, it'll look much the same as it has the last several weeks. There's really not much movement that can happen there. The only thing we've really moved around is that 2 spot on bars, whether it's been Elena or Olivia or Ashley Cowan has gone in once, and she's looking good. Cowan continues to improve her level of consistency in the gym and has scored well when she's gone in there. So I would be comfortable putting her in. I just don't know yet whether I would go with her over a more experienced, proven commodity in Olivia or Elena. But that's really the only place where we have much flexibility at all right now.
I mean, aside from the injuries, Leah's touched on being sick and kind of lingering on. Have you noticed any improvement from her? Yeah,
I think she's pretty much back to normal. But when we see what she's scoring with that 2-pass routine, you don't want to take them out of their rhythm once they get back in it. And she went 9.95, I guess, at SECs with the 2-pass routine. I think did the same thing the last meet at home after she had been sick. There's really no need to change it right now. We could if we advance to semifinals and we get a little more space between, when she was that illness knocked her down pretty good for 4 or 5 days, and so there's really no sense in adding the stress to her unnecessarily. That last pass really didn't add much anyway. And frankly, it was probably me being hard-headed because I don't like 2-pass routines as a general rule. I think it takes the sport in the wrong direction. But in her case, she doesn't lose because her first 2 passes are so difficult and done so well, and she has plenty of bonus. So it really didn't make any difference. As I said before, the choreography at the end added more to the routine because of the way she performs than a 1.5 front layout did. So I like the choreography. I think she's a magnificent performer on that event, and really is the whole package. From a dance to the way she performs, she uses her face and her expression, and also tumbles through the roof. So there's really not a weak spot for her on that event.
This might be a dumb question, but does the altitude in Denver is that a factor?
I mean, not any more than it was when we went to Utah. I mean, we didn't really have any issues with acclimating there. It's not a dumb question. Everybody asks it. I just think it's really irrelevant because there's not a thing we can do about it. We train at 0, and we're going to 5,000 feet. So there's really we're the one team that trains at sea level anywhere in the country. So it shouldn't be a factor any more than it was when we went to Utah. I think we'll be fine.
Bryce was just saying how she didn't really expect to be this big of a contributor this late in the season.
Yeah.
What do you think about the way she's kind of weathered this
Yeah.
adversity she's been dealing with?
Yeah.
Throughout this season?
I just think Bryce underestimates herself a little bit. I think she's immensely talented physically. But she doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience in terms of her high-level gymnastics as a level 10, or she didn't go and do international competitions or things like that. She got really good kind of late in her recruitable years, I guess, and we always saw the talent because she'd show up at camp, and there was just this dynamic presence to what she does. But I've said all along, I think for her, it's just about growing in her own confidence more than anything, and believing that she's capable of doing the things that she once looked at other people. She's out on the floor with people she once idolized, and so there's a little bit of a transition that has to go through there to realize, hey, I do belong here with these guys, and I can do this. And it takes, everybody goes through that at their own pace. So rather than try to force it, that's why we've tried to go a little bit slower with her.
Oregon State, Jade Carey, what makes her so good, and then what challenges?
Well, Jade's I mean, her record speaks for itself. She's an Olympian. She's one of the best leg event kids anywhere in the world on vault and floor, and collegiately really doesn't have a weakness. She's certainly the leader of that team. She's the face, the face of that program. Oregon State's a historical kind of blue blood program. I can remember in the 90s they were always in the top 3 to 5 in the country. So they've got good history. They've got good coaches. I think Michael and Tanya do a great job out there. They're a good team top to bottom, and at this stage of the game, the way it used to be different. You'd get past the top 5 or 6 in the country, and there was a precipitous drop. Now, you get all the way down to the top, the 20 to 23, 24. Everybody's pretty doggone good, and there's really no room for error. So, Oregon State's a really solid team.
You said that you like the fight and that they continue to show, but what do you think you learned, and the girls learned from this weekend at SECs that they can kind of work on and get ready for regionals?
Well, I think it's really goes back to the same thing we've been saying all along, is that we can't we got to be unshakable in our confidence. I think we started that meet, just the nerves were a little bit there and just kind of put a little bit of an edge on us. And I think we've got to remain loose and free, kind of fearless in what we're doing. The pressure's not on them, and they've got to stop thinking that it is, and just go compete free and be able to do 24 routines and then look up the scoreboard and see where we are. That's the best mindset for this group to be in. Given all the situations that we've had to endure through the year, that's going to be their best recipe for success, because they've got to be able to stay aggressive. If they get into this I've got to, or I have to, or we must be perfect kind of mentality, that's not a good recipe for, well, it's probably not a good recipe for any team, but particularly for this one, because they've overcome so much, and they need to understand that, there should be freedom. When you're playing with house money, you should feel good about what you're doing. You should be able to be aggressive with everything you're doing. And we're kind of playing with house money in many ways, in many respects. And that should be there should be freedom in that, and being able to attack and go aggressively. They've overcome so much and continue to improve and continue to defy all the odds. And that should be a very freeing mindset. And that's where I want them to be.
And the injuries and the uniqueness kind of them and the quantity of them, does it change the way you might look at the offseason in terms of recruiting, being the portal to kind of fill some holes, depth?
We pretty much, we're pretty much set on recruiting for the next 2 years already. Garrett monitors the portal all the time. I don't want to be a portal program if we can help it. And we've taken 2, but they were. Every situation will be done on its own merit. We don't have extra scholarships laying around right now anyway for the next couple of years. But if I had opportunity, I'd rather take care of somebody who's here and who's done the job than to go find somebody and bring them in, because you just never know what that's going to look like from a chemistry perspective when people have been. Cammie Hall was a home run in terms of chemistry, and Alexis Jeffrey has turned out to be a great addition to. Albeit with all the controversy that surrounded that, none of that has shown itself here, and she's been a great contributor and a great teammate. So we've done well with the 2 that we did, but we don't anticipate people transferring out, and I don't want to get in the habit of going and shopping the portal like you see so many programs do. That's a slippery slope a little bit to me.
With Alexis, you were talking about how she's acclimated well. Does she just simply need a change of scenery? That's why she's done so
You'd have to ask her. I don't want to revisit that whole scenario, because it's been talked about over and over again. All I know is that here, she's been a good teammate to all her teammates, and she's a friend to all her teammates, and she's conducted herself with the kind of behavior and dedication and commitment that we ask of all of our kids. So she's been a good addition.
Did you get a chance to watch women's basketball last night?
I did. Pretty dominant performance. I saw it looked like defense jumped all over them right from the jump, and never let up. And I think I wish we had defense sometimes, because I think I'd be a good defensive gymnastics coach if we could learn to form tackle, or something like that. That'd be great.
Do you have what's kind of your relationship with Kim Mulkey? Do you talk often? Does she share anything with you?
I wouldn't say often, but we text. She's always made herself available to me, and I certainly am grateful for that. You can learn from coaches in any sport, and I listen to the things she says, and I listen to things Coach Brian Kelly says, and I listen to things Coach Prime says, and I pay attention to what other coaches and how they approach. I think the minute you stop learning from other people, you might as well cash it in and go play golf, because it's just I enjoy being around other coaches. I love hearing how they approach things. We're all different, and our disciplines are so very different, but there's common threads in everything. And sometimes other coaches can remind you of things you already knew, but that you had neglected to use. And so it's just refreshing to I try to listen to all the pressers of all of our coaches and hear how they're approaching things, and just, if there's something that we can use, we try to use it.
She had a 5-minute long, maybe longer fight Thursday, I think it was, about Haley's 310s and
Yeah.
how she texted her, and you kind of see her at your meets.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Coach Mulkey is she's obviously a larger than life personality and an iconic figure in women's basketball and becoming that already in her second year here at LSU. So I love her enthusiasm. I love her support. I wish I could behave that way on our floor sometimes and get away with it. I think I would love to be able to work the officials the way that she does, and I'll let her continue to dress like she dresses. I don't need to do that. But I just, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Kim Mulkey and what she's done here. And I'm going to tell you right now, at some point, she's going to win a national championship, and they might have to think about putting a third name on that court because she's certainly she got that thing rolling.
For regionals, is there any idea of maybe having the lineups look different for semis versus if they advance?
I mean, if I had that luxury, we would look at that as a possibility. But in the old days, you could do that. In the old days, you could think along those lines. I just don't think anybody can afford to not put their best foot forward on the first day and then think that they're going to somehow make, unless you're a team like a Florida or something that just has, this war chest of depth of talent that's just ridiculous, and you can they're all interchangeable. There's not many teams like that out there. So, and in our current condition, without KJ, without Kaya, without Annie, without Cammie, without whatever the list is, you can't. There's just not that many. There's not that much flexibility. We have what we have, and as I mentioned, I've really got that one spot on bars that I keep kind of moving people in and out of. But other than that, there's just not many places to make a move. Hopefully, if we, assuming we qualify to the semis, to the semifinal round of the tournament in Fort Worth, then maybe KJ can get going by then. Maybe the docs are going to look at her late this week again, and but right now we got to focus on getting there because without her, so.